in terms of your words, we have pace and pitch, pause, and passion. They're probably the 3 key tips I could give you in terms of the words that you're using in the conversation that you have. Now, the second part, or the second area, is around your body. And this is another nice little quote. A smile is the shortest distance between 2 people. Now, hopefully you have noticed that throughout my conversation with you so far, I do use smile at times. I try to maintain a little bit of an extra smile as I'm talking to people. I'm making sure I'm not talking very seriously like this, but I'm just making sure that I've got a friendliness about the way that I present. And that if I do pause, or if I lean forward, or I have a little bit of extra conversation, that I am putting a smile on my face, because that does draw that connection between yourself and your listeners. So what are the 3 points in terms of your body? Number 1, smile. Number 2, and here I've gone with the S's just to make it a little more interesting. Number 2 is signal key points. So if there are key points in your conversation, obviously that we've already talked about the fact that you may pause at times. You might also use your hands or your face in order to make more expression of the points that you're making. So whether you move forward, whether you tilt your face a little bit, whether you're using your hands, now probably not too much that people can't see your face, but finding ways to utilize your hands. Now this will come into, I guess part of this will come into the conversation around how you record yourself, and perhaps our next session on utilising Zoom recordings, we might look into this, but you might want to be mindful of where you're positioning yourself. So that's my last point in terms of your body. Do you sit or do you stand? Now there's no right or wrong on this, but typically with a 3MT presentation, you'd typically be standing if it was face to face. The benefit of standing is just the fact that your lungs and airway is much more open than the chance of sitting and slumping and crouching down. So your volume and your communication comes out a lot clearer when you're either standing or sitting really tall. So there's some things to contemplate where you'd sit your screen for your recording, and whether you'd be standing and have something up high, or sitting but still having something that sits in the direction of you. And are your hands, I'll just wiggle back here, are your hands in view, or are you up close and using your hands to present but they're not seen? So there's some things to contemplate, and that's actually why it's a great benefit to do a little recording of yourself. Just do a solo Zoom session for yourself, record it on the cloud, and then go back and have a look at it and test it for yourself. The third section that I wanted to raise with you is about nerves. And this is a really cool quote. The human brain is a wonderful thing. It starts working the moment you are born and keeps on going right up until you stand up to talk in front of a group of people, by George Jessel. Now, I'm sure you all feel the same way, and I'm glad you do, because it really points to the key parts around nerves and what we just need to be mindful of. The first thing we need to be mindful of is that we have a brain. And for those of you who have heard me speak before, the brain and nerves is one of my passion areas. And the concept is that when we face stressful events, our brain will naturally identify that stress and create a nervous reaction in our body. And that's typically what we'd call our flight, fight, or freeze reaction. And most of you have heard of that stress response before. Now, we can either get ourselves really worked up about the fact that we're feeling nervous or we're feeling a bit stressed about presenting, or we can accept that we are all human beings, and the concept of experiencing that flight or fight nerves is actually normal, natural, and healthy. Okay. Now, if we let it go too far, then it's going to impact our ability to present. But if we take a few steps to control it, then there's a greater chance that we can present at our best. So that comes to our second B. And the second B is about breathing, which I know some of you will probably sit there and roll your eyes and think, oh gosh, George is trying to teach us to breathe. But breathing is actually a key concept in terms of calming the nervous system. So if we can find a way to deepen our breathing, there's a greater chance that our nervous system will start to calm a little, which allows us to have better and greater communication. All right, so breathe. Now, I still have 2 minutes in my little time slot here, I think, so I'm going to share something with you, and I'm hoping you might sit there and do this one with me. So I love this breathing technique. It's called a 1 to 5 breathing technique. And if you do it with me now, you'll see the benefits. So I'll ask you to breathe in for 1 count and out for 1 count. Breathe in, 1, 2, and out, 1, 2. Breathe in, 1, 2, 3, and out, 1, 2, 3. Breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4, and out, 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well done. I'm hoping you just feel that little bit of calm. And remember that it's not just a soft and warm and fluffy, oh, go and do a meditation. This is actually hardcore science that tells us that when we stretch the diaphragm through deeper breathing and slower breathing, we send a message to our brain to say, it's not that bad. And then our brain doesn't send all of those chemicals through our body, and we can focus on delivering. Now, the third B that I have here is about believe. Now, if anyone's going to believe in your work, it has to be you. You're doing your research for a key purpose with a key passion. And so you need to believe in what you're doing and what you're presenting. No one else has a copy. One's going to judge that. It all comes about with what you present and how you present it. So for me, that's all my sharing for today. Just a reminder, we're looking at what are your words, what's your body doing, and how are you managing your nerves. And through all of that, you will be able to come across confidently in your presentations. Thanks, Katie. I will stop my share there.
Thank you very much, Georgia. Some great tips and advice there. Now I'd like to invite Tom and David from eMedia Production Services, and they're going to talk us through presenting on Zoom and all those logistics.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. Hi, everyone. So my name is Tom Trelaw, and my colleague is David Lachlan. We work in eMedia Production Services, and why we've come along today is we've just gone through this process of presenting in using some technical adjustments to the Zoom platform and some considerations that are really simple to think about. Probably the key, so I've got a list, so if I'm looking away from you, that there's a reason for that. The first one is eye line. So I've actually adjusted my webcam for this presentation and brought it down off the top of my monitor. So it actually feels a little bit more at the correct line of sight. Yeah, obviously there are some that you may have your webcam built into your computer, and that's completely okay. What we would suggest is if you are standing or if you are wherever your position is, elevate your device so therefore it comes in line with your eyesight. And again, and I take George's point from the last session around doing a test recording. That's so super critical because that will give you a lot of insight to be able to tweak some of these things in a really relaxed kind of setting rather than having to try to do it at the last minute. So even the very subtle changes, if I was to, if this was up on the top of my computer where I would normally keep it, you'd be looking down on top of me. And it gives, by readjusting it to where it currently is, where I'm sitting in front of me, I actually can talk to it. And I'm focusing on you, I'm connecting to you through my camera. And that's probably the key element you're trying to achieve, is to actually connect through your webcam to your audience. The next one that we'll sort of touch on is in terms of lighting. Lighting's a bit of a, it's subjective to your location, to where you're sitting right now. But there's some things that you can think about. So one of the key ones is making sure you're not putting yourself against a large kind of window area where there might be a lot of natural light coming through, because what you'll end up with there is a silhouette. The webcam device that you're using will actually try to automatically underexpose because it's trying to balance out that bright light behind you. So if you can use that to your advantage, spin yourself around, have it in front of you, because that actually is great light to make you visible, but try to avoid having it behind you because it will actually create problems where the webcam just won't be able to adjust, and you'll end up with this. You'll be in silhouette, and everything out behind you will be visible. In terms of sound's a big component. Sound is sort of a bit of a forgotten thing for a lot of when we do these kind of things. So really what we're looking for here is, and there are some things that you can do, in terms of having a headset if you want to, or making sure that your distance to your microphone is, not standing it back at the other end of the room. You can also put things, if you're in a room that has a lot of shiny reflective surfaces or very tall ceilings, put things around you that will absorb some of that sound. And that can be soft furnishings, like if you've got rugs in your space where you set up, or if you've got curtains, all of those things will actually absorb that sound, so it won't bounce around the room and create an echo in your audio. And it can be very, very simple things. It can just be normal soft furnishings that you would have in your house. Most places, unless you're in a room with nothing, you'll find that you probably already have everything you need in that space. But think about that, what can you bring in? And it could just be bringing in some blankets to put on the chair, or something to absorb that sound. And then also just reducing those background noises. So, if you know that, and the one I can commonly think of is crows. Crows seem to make it in every recording that you can do, no matter where you are. So thinking about, what natural sounds might be around you. If you're near a road, maybe close the window behind you. Or if you do have, goodness knows, crows, pull that, close it off so that way maybe you can just buffer some of that sound. You're never going to get rid of all of it, but certainly trying to reduce that distracting background noise that might come in behind you. Probably the most important one is connection. Because obviously we are, in this situation, geographically dispersed. We're all kind of on our own networks at home or wherever you might be. Making sure that if you're using a Wi-Fi modem, make sure that it's not near any electrical equipment, such as like a microwave or a TV, or even if it's in a room that might have really thick, heavy walls. I can think of some, classic sort of Queenslander houses that have the really thick timber kind of walls where the signal just can't get out. And it might be something as simple as just bringing it out of that room into a central area, like a hallway or somewhere where it's more, the signal doesn't have to work quite so hard to get to you. And again, it's just making sure that you're reducing that digital traffic as well on your computer. So turning off any background apps that might be running. If you're using, no matter what program you're using, making sure you're closing down any open programs that might be running in the background, like Outlook, or your calendar sometimes runs in the background that might just be sucking a little bit of that extra signal that could make the difference between it pausing or having that bit of jumpiness. Little adjustments like that. If you're using hotspot data, so if you're hotspotting off your phone, making sure that you're putting your phone into airplane mode, and so that way it doesn't, not airplane mode, sorry, if you're using hotspotting, making sure you're putting your phone into do not disturb mode, so therefore any phone calls that come through while you're using that data won't interrupt your signal. If you're using just normal Wi-Fi, just put your phone normally into airplane mode or put it onto silent. So that way it doesn't, again, interrupt and create a sound issue in the background. And probably the other one, and I'm probably getting a little bit racing ahead, but is framing. Framing is a bit of a one that we all kind of, I do as well. I get out and pull my phone out and I've cut half my head off because of how I've set it up. So just thinking in terms of, and that's again where do a couple of test recordings, get a sense of where you might need to position yourself in relation to your device. If you need to put a little mark on the floor or give yourself a point of reference, it can be something as simple as a bag of rice, stick it on the floor, That way you know where you need to stand when you're recording, and that way you know you're going to be in. You're not going to cut half your head off or give yourself, take your chin off while you're actually doing your presentation. That's the key stuff. Technically, there are, you can adjust some of your video settings. So again, if you were finding that you're really having, really bad connection, you can turn off the high definition settings in your video on Zoom in the settings menu. But I would suggest that you use that as if your signal's really not coping, that's sort of your last thing to turn off, because you do want to have that HD recording running in the background, or making your picture as nice as it possibly can be. And probably one of those really silly things that no one thinks about, and I didn't even think about it before I started this session, was give your lens a clean on your webcam, just with a nice soft cloth, a cleaning cloth that you would use for your glasses or something. Just give it a little wipe down, just that way we get rid of any of those spots of dust or anything that might come up in your recording. I think that's the key stuff. I'll just check, David, can you think of anything else that might be relevant?
No, I can't really think of anything else. You've pretty much covered everything on my list.
Cool.
Yeah.
Probably the only other thing I will say is that I'll share these details with Catherine, and Catherine, you're welcome to share them out, is our managed account. We have a managed account here for inquiries. I'm actually happy, and I have a QUT phone number, mobile as well. I'm happy to answer any questions one-on-one that you might have. You're more than welcome to reach out to us through those managed processes if you do have any individual concerns that you might want to troubleshoot, and we can do those one-on-one if you'd like to. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. So I'll get those off you, and I will email them out to everyone after the session. I'll also put them on Blackboard.
Great.
Thank you very much.
No worries.
Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen, my presentation with you again. Everyone, hopefully that's come back and you can see that now. So as of this morning, we have confirmation that all the competition, that the entire competition is going to be run online via Zoom. What I will say about it is that don't stress about that. You've had some great tips there. This will be recorded. We'll be uploading it online so you can come back to it when you're ready. And the other thing is that the organisers of the faculty events are really passionate and have it sort of foremost in their mind that those events are all about kind of collaboration, just sharing your research. That's kind of the spirit of the entire competition. Sorry, I'm seeing so much chat. So if you're a bit anxious about presenting on Zoom, don't worry. There is support available to you, so you can contact your faculty-based organiser, who you should have been getting emails for already if you have specifics of how it will run for your faculty. But then there's also sort of that general tips, and Tom and David have very kindly offered to help you there. We will also be working with Tom's area very closely, with the winners of the faculty competition, as well as our wildcard entries as we go into the big research showcase at the grand final. So to finish off the content section of today, I wanted to talk through some practice tips and general preparation tips, starting with learning the script. So after the last session, you should have your draft script ready to go. Now it's the time to try and learn it as much as possible. So the idea here is that your delivery and your script should be almost second nature by the time you come to present. So you really should know, ideally, your script inside out, and especially to help with the nerves. Kind of the more you can just get up and deliver it, the more calm you will feel. Now, to do this, I recommend that you start trying to memorize your script as soon as possible, because you really want to avoid the reliance on cues and the temptation to sort of sneak a peek. If you get yourself into that habit, you might just be practicing and creating like another bad habit you need to break later on. So try and get off book as soon as possible. Now, when you are practicing and you're learning the script, pay particular attention to the beginning, because when you start off, that's when you're going to be most nervous. It's those few seconds before you start. So you really want to get the beginning in particular, really like that second nature flow, so you can just get up there and start and run through it brilliantly when you're at your most nervous. At the same time, you should also have the ending. You should be just as familiar, ideally, with the ending, because that way, you know, if you forget things in the middle, the audience, the judges, they won't know because they don't have a copy of your script. But the idea is that if you have the ending really strong as well, you'll be able to bring it full circle. You still get that impact factor at the end, so you can finish really strong. One thing I will say is that if you're having trouble memorizing the script, then perhaps think about if there's an issue with the flow or clarity of your script. If you, who knows your research inside out, are struggling with the sequence, and if you're constantly thinking, well, what comes next, then perhaps there's an issue with the clarity, with the overall clarity and flow of what you've drafted. You might want to rethink that. If it doesn't make sense to you, isn't going to flow logically for the audience. So you can also use the learning the script part to test out how the overall script works. As much as possible too, you should also try and memorize the script, practicing your delivery. That's with practicing with the pauses and everything. Don't try and memorize your script. Just don't try and memorize your script without, you know, just reading it through your head. Try and practice it and remember it by delivering it. Now at the drafting stage, we talked about drafting in that punctuation. Now is the chance to practice with those gaps and test them out, test out those pauses. You can also, at this stage, when you're still learning the script, use it to help with the delivery. So you can even add in extra punctuation if you want at the script stage to really remind you to take a break at certain sections. You can also be highlighting words and phrases and thinking about it as you go along, so that when you get to that point in your script and you start practicing from the very beginning, when you're still reading something, that you're practicing it with those emphasis points and pauses in there. Now that leads to the general preparation tips that I have for you. So with sort of, you know, thinking back on that punctuation, it kind of goes to the idea that throughout the practicing process and when you're preparing, you should be reflecting and adapting as you go along. Like the idea of practicing is that you're practicing to improve. Now, a simple way of doing this, I know, you know, we have sheets available on Blackboard, like the feedback sheets that we'll be using later on, as well as like a practice chart. What I do recommend, a really simple way you can think about it, is think good, better, how. So if you have a run through, or even if you're watching yourself back, think about what was good, what could be better for the presentation, and also how do you make it better. So be constantly thinking and adapting as you go along through this practice stage. The next thing is practice like you would on the day. Now, of course, this will vary. You're not always going to be able to practice, you know, with your webcam in front of you, speaking to your webcam and all of that. But I would recommend, as much as possible, practice like you're presenting, even if it's just practicing out loud in the early stages. So that's practicing with the gestures, the pauses, and all those things that Georgia and Tom were talking about. Now, also practice by yourself and reflect, like I mentioned earlier. We have a practice chart as part of that as well, but also practice with a wide range of people and get feedback. Now, we will be doing this in just a minute with the people online today. And well, as we've had a few practice sessions already, I've already had a few people put in the chat that they were thinking they would like another practice session after what we're about to do. If you're interested, we can look at arranging one over the next week or so, but that will be kind of demand driven. So we're only going to do that if people want to do that. So if you're interested, send me a message in the chat or email me after this, or let the facilitator know in the next session, whoever you're matched up with, and we can look at arranging another one pretty soon. But even outside of these practice sessions, Practice with a wide range of people, and that means getting outside practicing just with your supervisor and your HDR peers, because essentially, even if they are across disciplines, and still practicing across disciplines is very important, they're still in kind of that academia university bubble, and the idea of 3MT is you're presenting to a general audience. So also try practicing with your friends, your family, your grandparents, your kids. You know, if you're stuck with your Uber driver, taxi driver, maybe try out 3 minutes, your 3MT pitch with them. But, and there's an asterisk there, as much as possible, try and ask for structured feedback. Having people telling you it's just great, what might be good for confidence boosting is not actually going to help you improve. So that's why we have that feedback sheet online. And if nothing else, you can go back to the, you know, good, better, how. If you know, especially if they're saying that it's just really great, let me ask, okay, well, why is it great? Or, you know, what could be better? And, you know, how, like, what do you think could make it better? So you can still have those kind of informal feedback chats to get some more feedback that's going to benefit you and strengthening your presentations. Next one is practice regularly. So like I've said, we have a practice chart online. It's on the GRE+D HDR student Blackboard page. I will also send out a link after this session. This just gives you a time, a chart where you can sort of practice, you can note how regularly you're practicing and also make some comments. And these comments are purely for you if you want to sort of make a note about how you think you went, something you want to think about next time you come to practice. This may just help because if you practice regularly, it's going to be a lot better for you and you're going to be more confident and it will become more like second nature. You're sort of jamming it all the day before your faculty final. Now, when you're practicing, make sure you use a timer. So if you go over 3 minutes in 3MT, you're automatically out. So you want to make sure that you're not going over 3 minutes. But also, if you find that you're finishing around the 2 minutes 30 mark, or you know, even at 2 minutes, that means, and you're doing that consistently, that means you've got quite a bit of space in your talk to add some more content and value into your presentation. While you can't go over 3 minutes, you want to make sure that you have got as much valuable content in there as possible. And of course, if it's too long, by timing it, you'll know and you'll be able to cull some things. Now, the last one is one that people struggle with, but I would really recommend that you record yourself and watch it back. Now, this can be as easy as a one-person Zoom meeting. You just set up a Zoom meeting, it's just yourself, you go in and you hit record, and then you can watch it back. It can be quite challenging to do this if you don't like watching yourself back. I know I certainly don't. But one thing you can do is try and do the feedback sheet on your own presentation. So instead of being really critical, you can go in and actually think about, well, what did you do well? And sort of focus on those key points, which are also aligned to the 3MT judging criteria. Or if nothing else, think about good, better, and how. So that's it for me. We have some time for some questions now. We have a little bit of time for questions, and then we're going to go into our breakout sessions. So you can put your questions in the chat if you have any about either today's content or about if you have any questions around 3MT more generally, feel free to post them in the chat. While you're thinking of questions, if you do have any, I'll just say what we're doing next. So in a second, we're all going to be placed into a breakout room with a facilitator. Now in that session, you can, if you want to, share your screen. If you want to get some feedback on your slide or even your draft slide as to where it's at. And everyone will have a chance to present if they want to. Now you don't have to have something perfect. Everyone will be at different stages of this. Some of you will have, you know, a fully drafted script and a draft slide ready to go. Others may be earlier on in the drafting process. That's completely fine. We were hoping that ideally everyone would have a draft script today, but you know, you still may be early on in that process, especially because competition registrations are still open. If there is, I'm just going to stop pulling at questions, I don't get distracted. Even if you don't want to present today, I'd still really recommend that you go into those breakout sessions and participate with your peers. We've found that the students who have participated in practice sessions so far have learned a lot more about what an effective 3MT presentation is. by providing feedback to their peers and also being involved in those feedback discussions. So even if you don't want to present, please join the session and learn more about the 3MT and how, what the elements are. So I'm just going back to questions. Okay, so the first question is there a performer for granting permission for the use of images in the visualization thesis in 3MT? So I won't worry about visualization thesis for now. If you have questions about visualization thesis, you can email me after the session. For the 3-minute thesis, you should have all your images. If you're using an image or images on your slide, they should be referenced, or you should have permission to use them. We don't have a performer for that, but there should be something online, but not specifically for 3MT, just general copyright information about use of images. Another question is, I think this one I'm going to throw it to Georgia. The question is, when standing, should you just be able to see shoulders up still or up to the waist, for example? Thanks in advance. Georgia, I'm going to let you answer that one.
Oh, no problems. Look, I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think that it will depend on what David was talking about a little bit earlier in terms of how much lighting you have, and the further you stand away, whether you've got enough lighting to be able to see all of your expressions and, let's say, hand gestures. So again, at the moment, I don't think there's a right or wrong. I know, Katie, we have been talking about whether we'll create a bit of a standard pro forma set up for the finals, for the grand final. But I think for leading into faculty finals and things like that, I think you don't want to be so far away that you're seeing right down to your hips. I think the key thing is from head to wherever your hand gestures typically lie. So have a look at that for yourself. For some people, they're not big on hand gestures, so they may come forward and just have, from head to top of chest. Again, yeah, I don't think there's a right or wrong at the moment, so do play with it, but I think the key thing is don't be too far away and don't be so close that all they can see is your eyeballs.
Catherine, I can probably add something to that as well.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Tom.
No, that's okay. And the only other thing I'd suggest is with moving away or close to see your shoulders and that is think about with the positioning of your microphone. So if your microphone's built into your computer or is a fixed position, the further away you are, that will create more distance from the microphone and introduce more white noise that might come. And that can be, so it means that the microphone is going to have to work harder to hear you. So just those are just another variable to think about.
Thank you, Tom. That's a really important thing to think about for the competition. Also, for the online recording, for the online events, you're not going to be judged on the video quality in the competition. We've made that very clear for our students, to the judges. We've actually put it on the judging sheet. Do not judge on the video quality. But in saying that, we still want it to be clear enough that your message comes through effectively. Another question is, do you recommend to create a Word document with the script of the presentation? I don't think it fundamentally really matters. I recommend that you do have a full script that you at least start off with and some key points so you have a flow to it. As to how you do that, it's entirely up to you. We've had another question come in saying that they missed the first session. So the recording of that is available on the GRE+D HDR student Blackboard page. I will send out the link to that page after the session. So that session has that Blackboard page in the HDR competition section has the last 2 recordings. It also has a range of tools and materials. It has the Copeman article that I referenced in the first session and that George has been talking about today, where he talks about 3-minute theatre. It also has like made to stick resources as well as some Think Well resources on there as well. I think that's it for the competition. We've answered the standing or sitting question. Does anyone else have any questions? I'll just wait to see if nothing else comes through. But if not, oh, I've just done something to my, sorry guys, I've just done something silly with my Zoom bar here. Fix that in a second. So I've also had people going, can I participate today? I think, so if you kind of feeling more confident now at the end of the session and you don't want to have to go out practicing, that's fine. You're all going into a breakout room anyway, so you're more than welcome to do that. So that's it. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to the breakout rooms to do the practice session now. Now, after this, we won't be coming back into the main session because each group will be finishing at different times. So thank you so much for your time today, everyone. If I don't get a chance to see you again before the faculty finals, I will see you at those events. All the best with the preparation of your script. I look forward to hearing all your wonderful entries over the coming months at the faculty competitions. The grand final is going to be held on the 9th of September at midday, and that will be our visualization thesis and our 3MT final. So please come along to that. I'm going to put you all into breakout room session now. Now, people who are in my breakout room session, I am going to be, I'm just going to hang around for a minute in the main session to make sure that everyone goes in okay. So start introducing yourselves. You'll know you're in my session because Georgia and Murray won't be there. Thank you very much. I'll send out an email after the session. And for those of you who aren't in my session,